And how many times did I see black people in the movies? And if I did see them, what were they doing?
I had a question, but we run out of time. Listen, this is extraordinary, this documentary.
Oh, yeah. I
Please keep
agree.
making all the documentaries that your fingerprints are on, and we...
Screw the country. We're gonna do whatever we do to get this black man, we're gonna do whatever we can to get this black man out of here.
I want to ask you about a different documentary.
Go ahead.
As some politicians around the country try to erase black history, you're making sure people don't forget vital parts of our past, including this documentary.
When Morgan Freeman walked off The View, the fallout wasn't just about what he said, it was about what they didn't want him to say. And let's just say, the host did everything they could to cover their tracks. This wasn't your typical on-air disagreement. This was a full-blown expose on how the show operates behind the scenes. The moment Freeman stepped out of their scripted safe zone, you could practically hear the producers panicking. It wasn't just his words that shook the set, it was the truth behind them. Freeman hit them where it hurt, exposing The View's carefully curated glossy image and their reluctance to engage in real, unfiltered discussions about race, history, and accountability. And guess what? They were not ready for that conversation. As soon as the cameras cut, it was total chaos behind the scenes. Producers were scrambling, muttering things like, "We need to reframe this," and "This wasn't the direction we wanted." Damage control mode was activated. But here's where it gets really messy. On air, the hosts were practically tripping over themselves trying to redirect the conversation. You could see the discomfort in their faces as they desperately tried to smooth things over with vague statements about diverse perspectives and respecting different opinions. But let's be real, nobody was buying it. The audience saw right through the act. And the internet? Oh, they ate it up. Freeman's exit wasn't just a walk-off, it was a mic drop. And the aftermath was pure television history. The internet exploded the moment Morgan Freeman walked off The View. Social media lit up like a 4th of July fireworks show, dragging the hosts for what many saw as a blatant attempt to shut down Freeman's message. Viewers wasted no time reminding everyone that this wasn't the first time The View had tried to silence a guest who dared to step outside their carefully scripted narrative. Let's not forget the countless viral moments where dissenting voices were either talked over, conveniently misunderstood, or completely dismissed. And Freeman? Oh, they really picked the wrong one this time. You don't try to silence a man whose voice literally narrates the universe. The aftermath? Ugly. While Freeman kept his cool, letting the entire internet do the talking for him, The View scrambled to put out the flames. They released a generic statement about how they foster meaningful dialogue. But let's be real, nobody was buying it. Meaningful? The irony dripped from that statement. Critics ripped into the show's hypocrisy, pointing out that their so-called dialogue only happens when guests stick to the approved talking points. And it didn't stop there. Former staffers came forward, spilling all kinds of behind-the-scenes tea, exposing how producers carefully vet discussions to dodge anything that might actually challenge their audience. Here's the truth. They love controversy, but only when they're the ones pulling the strings.
They just couldn't help themselves and used it as an opportunity to make it about race. They thought they were going to be able to bait him in, but Morgan Freeman isn't interested in talking about race or entertaining race baiters. The ladies of the spew should have done their research before inviting him on the show.
How are we going to get rid of?
Should have done your research. They should have done their research on a lot of people they brought on the show. They just get straight shut down, y'all. Yeah, we don't even know how this show is still on the air. You say a prayer for anybody watching it, man, in 2024. Oh boy.
Racism and stop talking about it.
Oh man, here it is right here. Here it is right here. Let me go back so y'all can hear this, man. It's very, very important.
One insider didn't hold back, spilling the real tea. Morgan Freeman exposed them because he wasn't playing by their rules. And that's the uncomfortable truth they just couldn't handle. The second Freeman veered off their carefully controlled narrative, The View scrambled, but it was too late. Freeman's fans rallied behind him immediately. They flooded social media, sharing clips of his interview and breaking down every word, proving just how effortlessly he unmasked the performative nature of these so-called progressive talk shows. One viral tweet said it all. Morgan Freeman just walked into The View's house and turned the lights on. They weren't ready for the roaches to scatter. Meanwhile, the hosts weren't just criticized, they were roasted. Their awkward reactions became instant memes, with clips of them fumbling to regain control spreading faster than they could cut to commercial. But the real backlash came when people started pointing out the massive hypocrisy of The View. A hard-hitting op-ed summed it up perfectly. If even Morgan Freeman can't get a word in without being shut down, then what does that say about The View's so-called commitment to real dialogue? And just like that, the floodgates opened. Over the next few days, the pressure only grew louder. Historians, journalists, and everyday viewers demanded an apology, not just for what happened to Freeman, but for The View's long history of shutting down real discussions and carefully curating the narratives. The show had officially been put on trial in the court of public opinion. While The View desperately tried to sweep the incident under the rug and carry on like nothing happened, the internet had other plans. Social media exploded with hashtags like #CancelTheView and #LetMorganSpeak trending for days as thousands called for the show to be completely revamped or shut down altogether. And Morgan Freeman, he didn't say a word. No long-winded response, no damage control, just silence. And that silence, it was deafening. While The View scrambled to spin the narrative, Freeman's dignity and restraint only magnified the impact of his words. He didn't need to keep talking, the world was already listening. This wasn't just another viral moment, it became a cultural reckoning. It forced a bigger conversation about media bias, the suppression of dissenting voices, and the shady reality of performative activism. People began questioning how platforms like The View keep getting away with presenting themselves as open-minded, while silencing guests who refuse to follow the script. And just like that, The View wasn't just exposed, they were laid bare. Every false narrative, every empty gesture, every carefully orchestrated conversation, they all crumbled in the face of one man speaking his truth. Freeman didn't just walk away, he walked away untouchable, his legacy stronger than ever. And the real impact, it went far beyond Hollywood and social media. Advocacy groups jumped on the moment, amplifying calls for authentic representation in both media and education. And get this, universities started planning seminars and workshops inspired by Freeman's message. One conversation lit a fire that couldn't be ignored, proving that when truth speaks, it never gets silenced.
Inviting him on the show.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
I'd love to know what you guys thought of this in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it,
And that we just come together and love each other, man. We don't see color. We all bleed the same, man. And I'm wishing not only the best in your life, but your family's life, your kids' kids, the grandkids, future, the next generation, man. I love you guys, man. Like I say, we living in some dark, dark times. We have been declining at a very, very fast rate, man. We're divided. I encourage you to spread the love, man, to one another. I love y'all, man. God bless all you and your families. I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace and love, y'all.
Hollywood found itself backed into a corner, unable to ignore the intense backlash following Morgan Freeman's departure from The View. The industry was being forced to confront its long-standing habit of controlling narratives, cherry-picking historical truths, and erasing marginalized voices. Major studios scrambled to put out vague promises about increasing diversity in storytelling. But let's be real, how many times have we heard that before, only to see zero real action? However, this time, something different happened. Instead of relying on empty words, independent filmmakers and production houses stepped up in a big way. They weren't just making statements, they were making moves. Several companies quickly announced plans for new documentaries and scripted dramas centered on the forgotten stories of Black soldiers, scientists, activists, and visionaries whose contributions to history had been intentionally buried or overlooked. While Hollywood was in damage control mode, the producers at The View were in full-blown crisis. The first response was a weak cookie-cutter press release about fostering meaningful dialogue, but the public wasn't buying it. As calls for accountability continued to dominate social media, the show's producers realized they needed to act fast. Suddenly, they were extending an invitation to Morgan Freeman, claiming they wanted to give his message the time it truly deserved. But would Freeman actually accept? That remained unclear. And honestly, did he even need to? The silence he maintained after the interview was already louder than any forced apology or second invitation. Meanwhile, the public wasn't letting up. Hashtags like #CancelTheView and #LetMorganSpeak kept trending, and people across the internet weren't just demanding an apology, they were demanding real change. The controversy had transcended a single interview. It had become a catalyst for deeper conversations about media accountability, racial erasure, and performative allyship in entertainment. Morgan Freeman didn't just make a statement, he ignited a movement. And for the first time in a long time, Hollywood and mainstream media couldn't just sweep it under the rug. The conversation refused to fade away. Across social media, podcasts, roundtable discussions, and think pieces broke down the real impact of Morgan Freeman's exit from The View. This wasn't just another celebrity dust-up, this was a heated debate about the state of free speech in the media. Activists, journalists, and cultural critics started asking the tough questions. Why is it still so difficult for mainstream platforms to engage with hard-hitting conversations about race, representation, and systemic injustice? As certain media outlets tried to spin the narrative or brush it off as overblown drama, Freeman's message only gained more traction. Teachers started using his words in lesson plans, using the controversy as a teaching moment about media bias, censorship, and the power of honest storytelling. Parents shared clips of his interview with the children, turning it into a discussion on speaking up even when it's uncomfortable. Even church leaders tied Freeman's statements into sermons, urging their congregations to embrace truth over performative narratives. His words carried weight beyond Hollywood, striking a chord with communities that had long felt unheard, misrepresented, or erased. Freeman's challenge to tell all of history's stories, not just the convenient ones, resonated deeply. It was a wake-up call for many who had spent generations fighting to reclaim their place in history. His fans flooded social media and blogs with messages of support, defending his legacy with passion. Morgan Freeman isn't just an actor, he's a historian, a storyteller, and one of the last true truth-tellers in Hollywood. That was the sentiment captured in a blog post that went viral, perfectly summarizing what many were already thinking. People weren't just angry at The View, they were fed up with the media as a whole. The discussion refused to die down, and major news outlets were forced to revisit the controversy in the weeks that followed. The ripple effect didn't stop with Morgan Freeman. Other Hollywood veterans stepped forward, sharing their own experiences of being boxed into stereotypes, silenced, or denied opportunities simply for speaking out. Actors, directors, and writers called attention to the industry's long-standing gatekeeping, exposing how voices that challenge the status quo often find themselves sidelined. But this wasn't just about Hollywood. It was about the narratives that shape how people see the world. It was about the history that gets told and the truths that get buried. Freeman himself had made it clear. This was never about fame or controversy. It was about confronting uncomfortable realities. During his appearance, he had said, "It's not about me being right, it's about us figuring out how to fix it." His words didn't just strike a nerve, they dug deep, forcing people to reflect on their own roles in upholding or challenging false narratives. What started as a heated interview quickly morphed into something much bigger, a cultural reckoning. The conversation transcended social media debates and entertainment news. It became a mirror, reflecting the hard truths about race, media manipulation, and historical whitewashing. Morgan Freeman hadn't just sparked a dialogue, he had ignited a movement. Through his measured words and unwavering conviction, he reminded the world that truth is rarely easy, but it is always necessary. And the legacy of that moment wasn't about applause or backlash. It was about the undeniable power of truth and its ability to shake even the most stubborn institutions. But what do you think? Did The View expose itself for what it truly is? Or was this just another Hollywood controversy blown out of proportion? Let's talk about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the stories that really matter. See you in the next one.